What's going on, gamers? Today we're going to be jumping into a bit more Elden Ring, and I'm going to be giving you my top picks for the best 5 faith weapons that you should be looking out for in order to make some truly powerful builds. If that interests you, then that's coming up next. Welcome back everybody. No doubt that intro took a little bit longer than normal, so I'll try to crack on with this. Today we're going to be looking at my top picks for the faith weapons. These can really help you out and are some of the strongest ones in the game. Now, as always, if this list helps you out and if you enjoy this content, then why not hit that subscribe and bell icon for all the latest gaming content. But for now, we're going to be jumping straight in at number 5. So at number 5, and for anyone who's just recently got this game at Christmas, it is a bit of a spoiler because it's the final boss weapon you're going to receive. If you don't want to know about this, then skip ahead to the timestamp I suggest, but a lot of people will already know about this or have this, and it's pretty much one that has to make the list. And that's going to be this one right here, the Sacred Relic Sword. This one has to make the list for one massive reason, and that's that it's currently the best farming sword in the game. When it's maxed out, it scales to C off of your faith, B off of your dexterity, and D off of your strength, and the damage is split between physical and holy. The sword itself is pretty nice, it's got a standard moveset, but like I said, the main reason you're going to be using this is because of its skill, Wave of Gold, which is just absolutely ridiculous. This skill can absolutely massacre waves of enemies, it does a nice amount of damage, it's actually not bad in PvP now if you're playing against multiple enemies because of the actual wide area of effect and how long it actually is. You can use this at a lot of range, it's going to capture more enemies than pretty much any other AoE in the game, and it's just a lot of fun to see. And like I said, you will be using this at endgame for farming purposes if you're trying to get a lot of runes together. For that reason, we have to chuck it straight in at number 5. Next up, and one of my personal favourites in the game, I absolutely love this sword. It's a curved sword, which I really like in this game, and that's the Magma Blade. The Magma Blade has so much style to it, it really does, with a huge glowing red blade able to inflict fire damage and quite a chunky bit of physical. Again, once it's maxed out, it's going to be C Faith, D Dexterity, and C for your strength. And the attributes required for this are actually quite low as well, sort of perfect if you can pick it up around about that mid game. I actually beat the end boss with this sword, so it holds a kind of special place in my heart, and I think it has one of the best skills in the game. As you can see here, Magma Shower just absolutely decimates your foes. It does a massive amount of damage and is one of the best skills in the game when you're attacking either large enemies or slow paced enemies. Anyone that's actually going to sit in that pool of lava is going to take an absolute beating. The only time this isn't the best is if you're facing against very fast enemies that are going to be leaping around or dashing out of that effect, because then you will get far from the best damage. Next up, and one that probably not a lot of people will actually think should be making it into this list, but I love this weapon, and that's going to be the Black Knife. The Black Knife does a decent damage overall, is not quite top end, but it does do quite nice damage. And once it's maxed out, it's able to get C in Faith, B in Dexterity, and unfortunately only an E in Strength, so you probably ain't going to want to put too much in your Strength build. Again, it is split between Physical and Holy, so it can be a bit tricky to work into that endgame content for Elden Ring, but most of the way through your journey this will help significantly, and you can manage to get hold of this very early on. If you're planning to spec massively into Faith and quite a bit into Dexterity, this may well be one to look out for. Again, the main reason for that is going to be the skill that's allocated on this weapon, and that's going to be its Blade of Death. This has a really nice range to it, it really does. And if you have a Mimic tier with you, or if you have someone that can tank the enemies, allowing you to just pull a few of these off, it's going to do a massive amount of damage. It knocks off a bit of damage over time, it takes away, I believe it's about 10% of their health from the start, give or take, and in my opinion, because of its weight, it can even be perfect just to put on your build, use it once and then swap to another weapon, if you are struggling against a holy type enemy. Next up, and we have the Godslayer Greatsword. Just an absolute monster, this really is. It scales to C in Faith, B in Dexterity and D in that Strength scaling later on if you get to plus 10, and it's split between physical and fire damage. This weapon is just so good. I must admit I've probably not used this as much as I should have, but as soon as I did start using it, it absolutely tears enemies apart. Now it is quite split attributes required wise. You will need 20 in Strength, 20 in Faith and 22 in Dexterity, so you will have to build towards this, but it's definitely a weapon that's worth having in your arsenal. Its moveset is actually quite fast for a greatsword. It does a nice amount of damage, and as you can see here with its skill move, the Queen's Black Flame, you're going to be absolutely tearing bosses apart. This is another one that is a little bit slower to activate, and you will want to hit it with that second swing, as that's where the big damage is going to come from. But with a fully buffed build, you'll easily be able to mark up over 5k damage if both swings connect, and again you're going to get that hyper armor. So this can be great if you're after a tanky Faith build. Last but definitely not least, and I would love to have put something in this top spot this time for the latest patch, but unfortunately you just can't move away from this. This is by far the best Faith weapon in the game, the Blasphemous Blade. It has some very nice physical damage, some nice fire damage, and it scales really well off of Faith because it goes all the way up to B scaling, with Dexterity and Strength falling to C. The weapon moveset itself is pretty standard for a greatsword. It has some nice damage but isn't going to be the fastest. However, the thing that sets this apart, more so than any other weapon in the game, is going to be its skill, Taker's Flames. This skill is pretty ridiculously overpowered. It means you can quite easily decimate enemies, get all of your health back, and you won't ever really need to worry about flasks. If your healing is something you're struggling with, if you just find that you cannot stay alive, then this sword is the one for you. I also tried to show my Mimic tier using off the skill, however I picked an awful boss for it. Because the skill self-heals, your Mimic tier can also stay alive much longer than it probably would have. But again, if you want to absolutely burst down the enemies, it does very good damage. The skill actually doesn't take that long to activate, so you can get several of them out quite fast, especially if the enemy is aggroed by your summon, so you can nuke things down very fast with this sword, as well as being able to recoup all of your lost health if you have been hit. In my opinion, still the top pick, very possibly the top pick for the entire game, and just a ridiculous weapon overall. Still probably a little bit overtuned, but it's a lot of fun to use. But yeah, let me know in the comments, is there any you think I've missed off? I'm sure that people will have their favourites. But as always, for all the latest gaming, take care. I'll see you on the next day.